What if your reflection held the secret to your final breath? At the Grand Cheshire Hotel, the mirrors don't just show you your reflection, they show you every possible way you could die, and the spirits trapped inside make you watch. But there's one reflection you should be terrified of, the last one you'll ever see. It's a place that won't show up on any list of luxury hotels. You can't find it on any map, old or new. The Grand Cheshire Hotel is a ghost, a story whispered among collectors of the strange and the macabre, and an urban legend made real, a place that by all accounts shouldn't exist. And yet, for a chosen few, it does. It stands on some forgotten street corner by a city that's forgotten it. Its grand exterior, a relic of a past age. Its windows like vacant eyes, staring out at the world that moved on. My name is Julian Vance, and I'm a folklorist. Or, I was. My work was all about chasing whispers, finding the tiny kernels of truth buried in all tall tales. The Grand Cheshire was my white whale, a story I'd been chasing for years. Most people wrote it off as just another ghost story, but I found fragments, mentions in old letters, cryptic entries in dusty journals, all pointing to a place of terrible power. A place where the veil between our world and the next wasn't just thin, it was shattered. So when the invitation finally came, a single embossed card slipped under my door. No return address. I knew I had to go. It didn't feel like a choice. It felt like destiny. The card was simple, elegant, and utterly chilling. It just read, "The Grand Cheshire Hotel awaits. Your final story is ready to be told." I packed my bags that night, a knot of excitement and pure dread tightening in my stomach. I was about to step into the heart of a legend, completely unprepared for the fact the legend was waiting to step into me. The taxi driver who dropped me off didn't know the hotel's name, just the address. An address that took us down a series of cobbled streets I've never seen, even though I've lived in this city my entire life. He left in a hurry, the sound of his tires squealing in the unnerving quiet. The hotel just loomed over me, this masterpiece of Gothic architecture, all sharp angles and stone gargoyles that seemed to track my every move. The air was thick with the smell of old rain and decay, a sweet, cloying scent that stuck to the back of my throat. I pushed open the heavy oak doors and stepped into a lobby frozen in time. A grand staircase swept up into the gloom. A massive, unlit chandelier hung from the ceiling like a sleeping spider, casting tangled shadows across the marble floor. The only light that came from a few flickering glass lamps on the walls, their flame dancing in a silent, constant wind. The silence was absolute, a heavy, pressing weight that seemed to suck the very sound out of the air. There was no one at the front desk, no staff, no other guests, just me. A single, tarnished silver key sat on the reception desk, a small tag hanging from it with the number 302. My room. It seemed they were expecting me. As I reached for the key, my eyes landed on the huge, gold-framed mirror hanging behind the desk. It was an antique, the glass warped around and cloudy with age. For a second, I saw my own reflection, pale and wide-eyed. Then, it flickered. My reflection wavered, and for a split second, it wasn't me anymore. It was a version of me, twisted in agony. The face was mine, but the eyes were blown wide with a terror I'd never known. My mouth stretched open in a silent scream. His skin was a deathly blue, lips purpled, and I watched my own hands claw at my throat, fighting for a breath that would never come. It was a vision of suffocation, so real that I stumbled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. I gasped, and the vision was gone. My reflection was normal again, just a startled man staring back at himself. I tried to explain it away. A trick of the light, the old glass, the long trip. The small voice in the back of my mind knew better. It was a warning. I had just seen my first alternate death. I should have run. I should have gotten the hell out of there. But the folklorist in me, the part that craved the story more than anything, was already hooked. I picked up the key. The elevator was a wrought iron cage that groaned its way to the third floor like a dying animal. The hallway it opened into was long and narrow, lined with doors. A faded crimson runner carpeted the floor, muffling my footsteps. But it wasn't the silence that got to me. It was the mirrors. The walls were covered in them. Mirrors of every shape and size, placed at random, creating a dizzy, endless gallery of me. As I walked, a silent army of Julians walked with me into the gloom. I tried to focus on room 302 at the far end of the hall, but it was impossible not to look. The first mirror I passed was normal, and so was the second. But the third was different. As I walked past, my reflection stopped. I froze, my blood turning to ice, and turned back. My reflection stood perfectly still. Then it raised a hand and pointed. Not at me, but at the ceiling above my head. I looked up. Nothing but peeling plaster. When I looked back, the scene in the mirror had changed. My body was crumpled on the floor, head twisted at an impossible angle, a dark pool of blood spreading beneath it. My reflection stared down at the corpse with a cold, detached look. I had fallen, a fatal slip on the marble. In a flash, the image was gone, replaced again by my own terrified face. I forced myself onward, my pace quickening. But now every mirror held a new horror, one that showed me engulfed in flames, my skin blistering and blackening. Another showed me frozen solid, an ice sculpture with eyes wide in shock. I saw myself drown. I saw myself torn apart by something I couldn't see. Each vision was a personal, gruesome movie staring at me, and with each one, a whisper echoed in my mind, a ghostly chorus demanding, acknowledge it. See how you ended. Panic began to crawl up my spine, a raw fear that threatened to swallow me whole. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a curated exhibit of my own death. The spirits in this place weren't just showing me random horrors. They were showing me my horrors. Every possible accident, every violent end that could ever happen to me was being laid bare. I broke into a run, desperate to get to my room. The army of reflections ran with me, their faces twisting into different death masks. I fumbled with the key, my hand shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the door open. I finally stumbled inside and slammed it shut, pressing my back against the wood, gasping for air. I was safe, or so I thought. Room 302 was large, dominated by a 4-poster bed filled with heavy, antique furniture. It might have been elegant, if not for the suffocating dread that filled the air. And the mirrors. They were everywhere. A full-length one in the corner, a circular one over the fireplace, and the entire wardrobe was a single sheet of reflective glass. There was no escape. I felt like an animal in a cage, surrounded by versions of myself, all watching, all waiting. must have spent hours huddled on the bed, just staring at the mirrors, expecting another vision to jump out. But they just showed my own pathetic, trembling reflection. The shock started to fade, replaced by a cold, analytical dread. The folklorist in me tried to piece it together. This wasn't random. There was a system, a purpose. The spirits were demanding I watch them. But why? What did they get out of it? Desperate for answers, I started to search the room, trying my best to avoid my own reflection. On a dusty writing desk, I found a leather-bound journal. The entries were written in a spidery, frantic hand. It was the diary of a man named Thomas Weaver, a guest who stayed in this exact room over a century ago. His first entries were full of wonder. Then his tone shifted. He wrote about the mirrors, about the unsettling trickery of glass. He described seeing fleeting, disturbing images. Soon, his descriptions were exactly like mine. He was seeing himself die, over and over. They demanded I watch, he wrote, his handwriting growing wild. The specters in the glass. They were the souls of all who have died in these walls. They didn't die once, but in every way imaginable. Their final moments were laid for eternity in their silvered prisons. Now they are the curators of the hotel's curse. They force us, the living, to see as they see, to understand how fragile we are. The last entry was almost impossible to read. The mirrors show you every path to the grave but one, the last one, the true one. They save that for the end, their final, terrible gift. I have seen all the false deaths. There's only one left to see. I am afraid. The mirror over the hearth, it calls to me. It promises to show me the secret of my final breath. The journal slipped from my hands. The secret to your final breath? The title of the story I came here to find. It wasn't a story. It was a prophecy. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I slowly lifted my eyes to the round mirror above the fireplace. It wasn't reflecting me anymore. It was just a swirling vortex of shadow. The whispers in my head grew into a roar. 100 spectral voices all screaming at me. See your end. The true end. I was frozen, caught between the urge to run and a sick, morbid curiosity. The last one. The true one. This was it. The grand finale of the hotel's twisted show. After a storm of every possible death, the climax was the truth. My truth. As if pulled by a string, I got up and walked around the fireplace. The air around the mirror was unnaturally cold. The shadows inside the glass began to sharpen, taking form. This wasn't a quick, shocking vision like the others. This one built slowly, deliberately, painting a scene with agonizing detail. The image wasn't of a violent accident. It was of this room. I saw myself, decades older. My hair was thin and white, my face a map of wrinkles. This older Julian was sitting in an armchair, a blanket over his knees, just staring at the wall. The room was the same, but more decayed, covered in a thick layer of dust. He was a prisoner. And then I saw the mirrors. They were still there, but they were no longer reflective. They were windows, and in each window a different vision played on a loop. The fall down the stairs, the fire, the drowning, the suffocation. My ultimate deaths had become his eternal entertainment. The spirits weren't just showing me how I could die. They were showing me the damnation waiting for me if I stayed. To be trapped here forever. Forced to watch the infinite possibilities of life I could no longer live. The horror of it hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a prophecy of death, it was a prophecy of my fate. Become one of them. Have my spirit trapped in these walls, bound to the very mirrors that showed me my doom. My final breath wouldn't be a gasp of pain, but a slow, quiet sigh in a dusty armchair. My mind broken by an eternity of watching myself die. As the vision peaked, the older me in the mirror slowly turned his head. His clouded eyes met mine. For a second, I saw recognition, a deep, profound sorrow. Then, his face began to change. His features twisted into a mask of pure malice, the face of a triumphant, ancient thing, the spirit inside the mirror. It smiled a wide, predatory grin that split its face. You see it now? It whispered, a voice coming from inside my own head. The story isn't about your death. It is about your inheritance. The mirror began to glow, a sickly silver light that poured into the room. The other mirrors flared to life, not with visions, but with the same blinding energy. They were activating, syncing up. The room felt like the inside of a furnace. It felt a terrible pulling sensation in my chest, drawing me toward the glass. The spirit in the mirror reached out a shadowy hand, not from the glass, but through it. It was breaking the barrier. It was coming for me. I screamed and scrambled backward, falling over furniture. The room was a vortex of light and sound, the whispers of the dead now a deafening roar. The force pulled me was immense, undeniable. I was losing myself, my spirit being drawn out like a thread from a tapestry. This was the final confrontation, not with death, but with a living hell. My reflection wasn't just showing me my end, it was my end. The Grand Cheshire Hotel isn't just a haunted place. It's a factory of ghosts. It collects souls and traps them in a loop of their own mortality. What you've just heard is my story. One guest's journey into the hotel's horrifying grip. But how many others are there? How many spirits are trapped in those mirrors, each with their own library of alternate deaths? If you're drawn to the darkness that hides in the corners of our world, if you want to follow me to more places that shouldn't be, then subscribe to this channel. There's so many more stories waiting to be told. My last coherent thought was of the invitation. Your final story is ready to be told. I was a fool. I thought I was the one who would be telling it. The Grand Cheshire had other plans. It doesn't let its stories leave. It keeps them. It archives them in flesh and spirit. I don't know how long I was on the floor, lost in that light. But when I came to, the room was quiet again. The mirrors were just mirrors, reflecting the dusty room and my own terrified face. Nothing had changed, but everything was different. The pulling was gone, but something had been left behind. A coldness, an emptiness. I packed my bag in a daze and I fled. I didn't take the elevator. I ran down the stairs, my footsteps echoing in the massive stairwell. I burst out of the oak doors into the grey dawn, gasping the clean air like I'd been holding my breath since I arrived. I didn't look back. I've tried to write the story of the Grand Cheshire. The words, they feel hollow. I can't capture the true horror of it, because the horror isn't just what I saw. It's in what I now carry with me. The hotel let me go, but it kept a piece of me, a souvenir. Sometimes, when the light is low, I'll catch something in my reflection. A flicker, a brief, horrifying flash of a man on fire, or someone clawing at their own throat. The visions from the hotel's mirrors, they followed me out. They're no longer trapped in that cursed place. They're inside me now. The spirits gave me a preview of their collection, a taste of the eternity that could have been mine, or maybe the eternity that still will be. I live in constant fear of mirrors. Every reflective surface is a potential doorway, a reminder. I know I'm marked. The story isn't over. It's just waiting. Waiting for the day I look into a mirror and see the final reflection. The true one. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to my bones, that when I do, the Grand Cheshire Hotel will be waiting to welcome me home for good.